Hey everyone, welcome back to Buzzworthy. I'm your host, Shlacey Harris. I dive into the rare stories entrepreneurs tell about building their businesses, but most importantly, themselves. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Buzzworthy. I'm your host, Shlacey Harris. And today we have Amin Ahmadi, a co founder of AP Renewables, which is a renewable energy company or supports the renewable energy industry. And Amin started this journey of building this company from one question from a phone call. Do you want a job climbing wind turbines in another country? I mean, thank you for being here today with me so we can dive deeper into the question that you were asked and how you're building AP Renewables.
Thanks. Hello to everyone, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So, I mean, what do you think really set you up to be an entrepreneur?
I think ultimately this last stage in forming AP Renewable was being at the right time with the right friend. And also, I really wanted a job that didn't exist in Hamilton, or at least I couldn't find it. So I decided to just make that job, and that became AP Renewable.
Wow. So when you look at like your background and all of the experiences that you've had throughout your life, what is it that you think gave you the confidence to say, I can't find the job I want here. I'm just going to make it? Because being an entrepreneur is no easy feat. It's one of the hardest things you'll do in your life, right? So, what is it? What is your backstory? Tell us more.
I think it's very much what you said. It's not appreciating how difficult it's going to be. So it was the ignorance of not knowing what it'll take to actually make the company work, and thinking, oh, I guess I'll just start a company. And it's taken a while. It's left some bruises, but what had to be done had to be done.
Yeah. But that mindset in itself is something that I think every entrepreneur needs to have. If it's got to be done, I just have to do it. And this is how we're going to keep moving forward. What is it in your lifetime or in your earliest experience that you can possibly remember where you absolutely had to have that mindset?
I think, well, I always think it would make things, and I've had an obsession with cars. And I remember taking apart like the hood of the car or the carburetor or something. That's when I was like, I don't know, 10. My dad coming home from work and looking at it and he said, I think you're going to have to put that together by the time we need to leave in the evening. And he just moved on and go inside. And I was like, he gave me enough credit and trust that like I am going to put this thing that I'd never opened before together. And there was an element of there's a deadline, we need to go out, but it worked
Hmm.
out. It worked out that one time, but ultimately I realized that like if you take it apart, you have to put it back together, and we got here. 30, 40 years later, we
Wow.
got to this point.
So this happened when you were 10, and your dad trusted you to put a very key component of a car back together because you took it apart. What made you take it
Or he
apart in the first place?
I'm sure I've found many reasons why the carburetor has to be taken apart, but I'm sure now that I'm looking back at it, I just needed to see what's inside. I don't think any car ever needed my touching at that age. Um, but yeah, I think there was some nice trusting element in that comment, and sort of
Hmm.
leaving it to me to figure it out.
Yeah. I love when entrepreneurs tell me of stories like that because it's interesting how those moments get, sort of cemented in the back of our minds somewhere. But I think they play such a big role in like the people we eventually become, because in that moment you got a lot of trust, um, a lot of confidence kind of poured into you, and you had, like you said, a deadline to meet, and you had to figure it out. And if that's not the day-to-day entrepreneurial experience, then, what is? So you sort of got that inadvertently from your dad at this one critical moment that you obviously remember, which is incredible, and has sort of built on that throughout your life to the point where that moment came and you're just like, I'm just going to create my own job.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, when we look at, you know, the years leading up to um AP Renewables, what was happening in your world as an engineer? Because you eventually became an engineer, and you've obviously done work before AP Renewables. Take us through that career progression.
Well, starting at, I don't know, early 2000s at Mac, and I have to say a lot of what I learned and a lot of my nice experience was the McMaster Solar car was this tangible hands-on experience with a piece of machinery that has to get on the road. And coming out of there, I worked in a little bit of design and robotics and then semiconductors, and then coming to appreciate that I just like big greasy machines. My body is kind of more in favor of those things than tiny little semiconductors.
Mm-hmm.
And then this wind turbine job has started. Um, and then I sort of was in charge of supporting or engineering support um, for these wind turbines. Um, and coming to appreciate little by little less, there's a technical element. Yes, the mother nature is sort of making the life of these machines really rough. And
Mm-hmm.
also how the human element is key to like them running or not running, people that need to run them, people that need to maintain them, all sort of other aspects of logistics and training and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
As I grew as a person, as I gained more experience, kind of became more aware of the human element in this equation. I've always been mesmerized by the physics of it, and like eventually learned the name of it is reliability, the way, wind or water or like some sort of load like impacts a machine, but also then when it breaks down, there needs to be a part, there needs to be a person. That person needs to have the right training and they need to have the right tool to show up and fix it. And
Mm-hmm.
wind turbines were kind of interesting because the problem isn't one time fixing it. It has to be done hundreds of times, thousands of times to hundreds of um, machines over tens of years for it to be economically viable. Like ultimately, if it's not a business, then it's not a thing.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's cool to have hobbies, but certain things they just have to work as a business.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
I guess that's part of that forming the trajectory of my career, getting to the point where I was at the right time, right place with the right friend to form AP.
Yeah. And your experience as an engineer throughout these years really put you in different places. Like you said, big greasy machines kind of became your thing. Do you think that resonated with other people when you eventually got that call about building, and climbing, not building, but climbing wind turbines as a job?
I think it started as a very interesting offer.
Hmm.
And sort of gauging my life, I was like, I'm in my late 20s. I can move quite easily right now. Um, but I wasn't so like I was mostly curious about the experience than completely
Mm-hmm.
like, mesmerized by it, let's say. It became
Yeah.
more interesting over time. But yeah, I think it was just kind of curious and I was open to that curiosity.
Yeah. I think curiosity itself is such a key component of entrepreneurship overall, because if you're not curious, you don't have the will to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And it seems like it's something, that's so deeply ingrained in you, going back to, when you were 10 years old. You must have been curious about something in that car part that caused you to take it apart in the first place. So, when you eventually took on this role, climbing wind turbines across the US, going to, all these different parts of the country, because wind turbines need a lot of space, right? They need a lot of space, and there's usually hundreds of them or tons of them in like out in big fields at one time. So that being like, sort of a relatively new industry with renewable energy and all of that, what do you think was really happening in the world that created opportunities for, you know, this job to even like come together?
Um, I guess the push to have clean power in the last 20 years have been strong for various culture and, climate change reasons. At some point, sort of
Mm-hmm.
the momentum built enough to be it's a good investment.
Yeah.
And that's when the numbers started being in the thousands. Um, and you're right, they are often in remote areas because you need a lot of space. In some ways, for better or worse, no one wants it in their backyard, so they have to be fairly remote.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, um, I my role is generally in once they're in the ground and they're running, then I help them run longer and run better and run cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a whole other world and part of the industry that goes from like investment and greenfield, figuring out where they need to go and how to connect them, that it's completely new to me. And again, very curious. I just haven't been exposed to it as much. Um, and I think people in that role could probably answer the question of how did we end up with thousands of these things a lot better than I could. You know what I mean? I'm sort of obsessed with like once it's in the ground, I just want to keep it running longer. Um,
Yeah.
but I quite appreciate that a lot of pieces have to come together for one of these, or solar panel, or even a nuclear plant, any of them really to
Mm-hmm.
exist, to come to be.
I mean, what were some of your favorite memories touring the US and, as you were a wind turbine climber?
Story was sort of having earlier years. I spent about a bunch of time in Central Texas, and I was up a turbine with a couple of locals. We get along despite our differences. And first, I told them that your accent is difficult, and one of them is like, "I mean, you're just shameless, man. Like you got more accent than I do." And then later, like day goes on. Uh, uh, I was installing a computer and he watched me fuss and like be around and try to install this computer. And eventually the technician is like, I mean, can I do this? I'm like, he's like, can I redneck this? He kind of agitated in a friendly way. He's like, I don't know, man. I've just watched you do this, and we have a thing here called rednecking, which means I'm going to grab a lot of tape, and he just wrapped the tape around the big electrical cabinet and taped the laptop there. And he stepped back. He's like, "Look at it now. It's not going to go anywhere." And I was just sick of looking at you. Um, and that's when I got introduced to the web rednecking it, which really, really works. Um,
I
and it did. We got back down because it just worked. Um,
That is so funny. That is just, you just got to get it done, right? It's kind of
Yeah,
the same mentality you had from the beginning as well, too.
he was just done watching the office engineer just fuss around and put a computer in the perfect place. I also had another instance, maybe another story could fit in, is being asked, like the guy's like, I mean, you don't vote for Obama, do you? I'm like, man, I'm sort of on a work visa. I can't even vote. He's like, I don't care. Just even if you vote for Obama, just don't tell us around here. We seem to be getting along well. I don't want that to, I don't want us to have a problem. So if you do vote for Obama, don't tell me. And that was the end of that conversation. This is like
I
2012, South Central Texas somewhere, and he just wanted to make sure he never hears from me if I can vote for Obama, or if I would
I
vote for Obama.
I appreciate that, you know. I think that is such a good way to maintain like good work culture. Some things you just don't have to talk about. And if you think that's really going to change your perspective on someone, you know, sometimes you just got to keep the peace. But those are some really great stories from your wind turbine days.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you were working as a climber, what was the real opportunity or problem that you saw that became the critical thing that AP Renewables started to solve for the renewable energies industry?
Two key problems. One is that sort of people in their attempt to fix the machine or maintain the machine don't have the right information,
Mm-hmm.
and that makes it like uh, that makes the attempt be a lot longer than it needs to be or be ineffective. And that comes from sort of relatively hard nature of the job, making the skill, like the labor retention fairly low. And the other one is the manufacturers tend to not want to share that information with the owner for various either business or legal liability reasons. So when you
Mm-hmm.
might own the machine, but you don't exactly know what it's saying or what the problem with it is, and you don't have a lot of good data, and you definitely don't have a lot of good documentation that limits it. And what could be replaced by experience over time doesn't quite exist in the new industry um, because it involves climbing. Um, you tend to lose people very quickly. Like by the time you're in
Mm-hmm.
your late 30s, early 40s, chances are you might move on to another industry. Like if you're doing maintenance at, I don't know, like a chicken factory, whatever factory, it's on the ground. You become a good
Mm-hmm.
technician. If you work at a Stelco, you chances are you stick around for years. At a wind turbine maintenance facility, you you start looking at other things because it's quite demanding on your body. You have to climb, you have to
Mm-hmm.
drive, So it um so the skill is not quite there to just learn your way to a better solution. So
Mm-hmm.
AP, we saw an opportunity to provide this remote support, bring in the data to help somebody pinpoint the problem, and then centralize this, capture the expertise to provide it remotely to people so that a younger person that goes to do a repair could now be remotely supported, um, even if they haven't been doing this for 15 years.
That is that is quite a big gap to fill. Um and I think such a critical thing because I mean help us understand and paint the picture for listeners. We know that these wind turbines are tall, but do you actually know how tall they are or how many rounds of the ladder you need to climb to get to the motor at the top or whatever you need to maintain?
Yeah, somewhere between 80 meters to now the newer generation, 150 meters of climbing. And some of them have even a service lift or elevator. Um, but that doesn't save the fact that getting up there takes 20 minutes. That's after you have probably driven 40 minutes from the office to get to it. So you drive through, like
Wow.
sometimes you come out of the office, you go open a gate because there's a bunch of, cattle around. You drive through a bunch of gates. You drive for like 20, 30, 40 minutes to get to the base. Then you climb either 20 minutes or you take an elevator for 15 minutes or 20 minutes and you're up there. And now
Mm-hmm.
if you figure out the problem and you need the one part you didn't bring, you're going to undo all of the everything you did to go get that part and then go back up and fix it. Um,
Yeah,
so right there, you've had the machine down for an hour and a half. Like if everything goes perfectly, you've had it down for an hour and a half just because you
mm-hmm.
forgot, I don't know, a screwdriver or a screw or like a bit of valve, I don't know. And this is where we thought, hey, if we sort of give somebody a plan of attack, um, that could shave, 40 minutes of that.
That's
Um,
huge.
yeah, and um, I mean, when I joined it, I just, you put the wind turbine up, it runs, it produces power. But in reality, it's a machine that needs maintenance every 3 months or 6 months. That's when it's working
Mm-hmm.
well, and then you need to fix one thing or another every, I don't know, a couple of weeks. So they take quite a bit of babysitting, and that babysitting
Mm-hmm.
has to be done by human beings, which, need the tools and need the skills and need the time to go do it.
You're bringing like so much efficiency, um, and time savings to the maintenance of these equipment because I can't imagine, a company would want their you know, their energy creating machine to be down for longer than it absolutely needs to be down for maintenance. But like you said, if someone's not getting the right information at the right time, then that doubles or triples or extends that amount of time you have to wait for that machine to start doing its work that much faster. It's like having someone go to show up on the job, but because they didn't, have their laptop with them, they're no good to you, right? To some
It's
degree, because they can't do the work.
it's exactly like that.
Yeah.
Or it's like taking the car to the mechanic, they can't find the problem. They, I don't know, change some random other parts, you go back and the same thing happens, especially if you have like an intermittent problem. And they
Mm-hmm.
just randomly uh, um, try things. And it's pretty common. My co-founder uh, found he started using this for throwing parts at the problem. And that's what they happen. I don't think they literally throw it, but that is what they just go up there because um, it was an interesting observation he had. Is like as a technician, um,
Mm-hmm.
you go up there, you can't find the problem. Psychologically, or organizationally, you can't come back and say, I didn't do anything. It's
Yes.
easier to tell your boss, I did this thing, even if that thing is rather random or ineffective.
Mm-hmm.
So it's better to throw a random good part and replace an already good part than come back and say, well, I drove there for 2 hours and didn't do anything, because that's not an
Yeah.
acceptable sort of thing, right? So it creates this
Mm-hmm.
randomness in the maintenance, which our value proposition is remove that randomness and have make sure people are working on the problem, um, on the right problem, or or
Yes.
they're working on the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you said they're working on the right problem because something might be a problem, but is it tier one, tier two, tier three problem that has to be addressed to keep the machine up and running? It might not be. And um that's what AP Renewables does. And it's always so fascinating to me because people that don't work, myself, I've never worked in renewable energies. I have no idea, no concept of what it means to work in this industry. Um, it's so interesting to know that these gaps exist, and that's how companies get created. And it's great that you had this experience that eventually led you to creating this company. But as you started building AP Renewables, because now we know that this problem is solid. Your problem is solid. You have customers, they're getting so much savings, so much efficiency from you. What were some of the challenges you found building your company?
I think the first opportunity that came out of a challenge was like sort of seeing a problem in a turbine type and trying to solve it. And I had this very complex solution. And my co-founder, Joe, is like, I mean, we send this sample to the field and the feedback from the tech who was installing it is like, I mean, there's no way I can fit this thing anywhere. So
Mm-hmm.
Joe, being having sort of a design background, got the whole thing and has stripped out 90% of my great ideas. And then the 10% was this really easy to install, quick, effective solution, which then we can start selling. So
Mm-hmm.
it was first thing was like mixing the right combination of a genius, great idea that doesn't work with somebody who knows how to design and appreciates like making things simple,
Yeah.
putting them together. And then and this is an ongoing sort of challenge and learning and thing we try to do. And then from there is trying to industrialize an idea. Like, okay, we got a good,
Mm-hmm.
we found a problem, cool. We understand the technicality, great. We attached it, like we threw a good design at it. Then the third problem is sort of how do we make it? How do we market it? How do we kind of, once we have sold it, how do we deliver it constantly in a way that makes the customer want to
Mm-hmm.
come back? And the last, but certainly not the least part, is how do we keep a team together that could do all of these things effectively and make sure that every part of the team could go on vacation, could move on to another job, could add you know what I mean? That last
Mm-hmm.
piece is essentially what makes a company a company. Otherwise, it's a great idea.
Yeah. I the problem that you're talking about, I think, is probably the biggest challenge that every entrepreneur that's building a company and start to build a team kind of encounters because like you said your solutions are great, they're genius, you're figured out a lot of the technical things, especially as like engineers and people that like to tinker and fix and design things. That part of it is really nailed down. But then when you start to switch to the human side of the business, right? All of your human resources, if we're putting this in air quotes, your human resources are really your biggest asset in any company because the humans stop working, your business stops working, no matter how great your idea is. What would you say, when it comes to the management of people and the experiences and the challenges around that has really been difficult? Is it around just finding good talent, finding people that are willing to learn? Like, how would you categorize your biggest human challenges?
I think, honestly, the biggest challenge is sort of my ability or our executives' ability to manage. So we have to be kind of
Mm-hmm.
humble and honest about it. And in the process and in dealing with that challenge, we've sort of had a few learnings. One of them is like people always almost do their best, and there
Mm-hmm.
is almost no point getting if something failed, it's usually not that people failed, but the situation you put them in should be taken as at fault. Otherwise, most
Mm-hmm.
people generally mean really well. If they don't know it, they don't know it. So in some ways, yelling at them, quote unquote, isn't going to make situation better.
Yeah.
Um, Another kind of random learning is like some people are quite flexible. Like Joe and I both have been quite flexible in trying whatever thing. Um, But one has to appreciate that not everybody's as flexible. They can't switch tasks 15 times a day or be thrown in every problem. And chances are, if they were that good at it, they would probably be doing some sort of entrepreneur thing themselves. So
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to go to the market and find, or you're unlikely to find that ideal candidate to just replicate yourself. Because if they're exactly like me, then they probably be starting, you know, AP2, whatever the name might be.
Yes.
So you have to sort of find these roles where people are comfortable doing what they're comfortable doing. And that's been a
Mm-hmm.
huge learning process for us um, in giving people roles that they're really, really good at and appreciating that and sort of let them excel at it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a learning process. There is no, I cannot say I've learned it. It's just we've learned what doesn't work.
Yeah.
So we're trying to not do those things.
That that's definitely as you're trying different things and trying to figure out what is actually going to work well for building out your team really well is really identifying the the true roles and what are the real skills that you need within those roles. And you've done that so far, but it's how do you plan long term, right? And how do you really manage those folks and the ability for them to, like you said, do their jobs really well. What would you say is one of, I know you've learned a lot about hiring people and kind of creating those roles, but what's something you think you've done really well so far from like, the human management of the business?
Um, I think we've had a fairly decent retention of people, and people have felt comfortable, or I like to think, but you should ask them. Uh, Something that I actually learned from you was, I don't know, it was a conversation we had a year ago or something about hiring. And it's like there's so much you can learn about someone in an interview. But you might as well almost lower your costs, get them on board, and kind of test them in real situations. And that's been one of the
Mm-hmm.
most effective hiring advices I've had. Like you can get picky at the interview, but ultimately it's a simulated environment. So might as well not bleed too much resource into that stage. So I'd say our hiring has been we've hired a pretty good team, and we have also built one thing we've done really well is building a good network of people that haven't been sort of I put up a job posting and hire, but like very key
Mm-hmm.
talent around that we have a good network. Um, we have a very good network of
Yeah.
industrial contacts for different reasons.
So you get really good referrals coming in. So they have some experience, some knowledge, but they really have the skills to do what you need them to do.
Yeah, or like for example, this one person who's specialized in one component of one type of turbine, and we just have a good relationship. Maybe we have a small contract with them, and that's the one person that can answer that question. You know what I mean? There is no
Hmm.
sense in us hiring someone and building the experience for 10 years. No, it's not practical, but we've built that network to sort of reach out to so and so who might live in another country and have them answer it.
Yeah.
Um, so I think we've done that part fairly well. Or a couple of really good Forge, Innovation Factory, Hamilton connections that they're not in renewable wind turbine operation, but we
Hmm.
identified the part of their thingy that is like our part of our thingy, and we can go borrow it. This morning I had a meeting with a connection around here. They do IT monitoring in server space.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
but we have now borrowed their cyber secure hardware infrastructure and use it in our wind turbine monitoring thing. Like on the surface, we have nothing to do with theirs, but we didn't have to remake the whole underlying platform. We just took theirs.
Repurposed it.
We
Yeah.
repurposed it. So I don't know. Does that answer your HR question? I think in yeah. I dodged the question, but I tried to give an answer.
I think you did answer it in some ways. I think it's very creative ways in terms of, like you may not be able to hire the right people for every single thing, either whether it's at this phase of the business or for these very specific niche skills and capabilities, but you found a way around finding these skills, whether in partners within the industry or finding other industries that have very similar tools or adjacent solutions that are impactful. And I think that just speaks to the real, I don't want to call it scrappiness because it's not scrappiness. The real foresight, actually, of entrepreneurs to put a puzzle together of things that look like they don't belong together. And I think that's the real creativity and art in entrepreneurship because why did you think this cybersecurity company thing would work over here in renewable energies, doing relatively the same thing, but in a different way? Somebody else might just think, like you said, we'll build it ourselves, but why would you build it when all you have to do is fast adapt it from another industry? And I think that is like true entrepreneurship and really, you know, I don't know if you know how like AI is sort of developed and coded in the background, but it's really using a network effect, right? In terms of how AI actually gives you the responses of all of your prompts and everything that goes in it. It searches the network for all these things that might be connected and then pull it together in a succinct way. And that's ultimately what what you've done is it's not directly related here, but it is still quite relevant enough. And now you have a good fit. And I know you talked about humans being your biggest challenge, but humans also being the biggest and most important intervention in renewable energies, especially for these wind turbines that we've talked about. What are your thoughts around the capabilities of AI and maybe AI agents? Not to say that they're replacing humans necessarily in the work that you're doing, but what are your thoughts around that when it comes to hiring for specific skills? Is that something you've thought about? Is that too in the future for you, or where do you sit on or that spectrum, I
Um,
guess?
the large language models, we have sort of as two sides to our relationship with it. In one way, it helps us develop codes, be a little quicker, more efficient. And I think our team has been good at telling me that like even make games for our marketing is like, let's just get this game and it doesn't need to be fully perfect, but we get Chat GPT to build it for us and then we dress it up. That's one side of our relationship with it. I think it's a tool. It helps us be more efficient, and I don't want to worry about it replacing me for now. But for I do want to take the benefit of it. It helps us be more efficient.
Hmm.
Specifically in our industry, like that when I was talking about sort of bringing together the expertise to, help the previous experience or guess from the data what's broken about this turbine and suggest something to do to the technician, I think our niche is very much an application of this technology, the large language model type is like
Hmm.
get all 20 last attempts at this same problem or what seemed like the same problem, bring it together and synthesize an instruction to the technician. So I think the LLMs, that large language models, have evolved, but then they need real applications. Like me asking it a stupid question is kind of cool, but it's not really like a business application for it. But I feel like what
Hmm.
what we are doing is very much an application of this thing. And I've seen this in like people go back and look at um, work orders, like description of what people had done in the last 2 months running into a similar problem and try to conclude what to do now. And
Mm-hmm.
that means somebody who is physically in the machine needs to now have access to all that data to then make a judgment call what to do. I'd imagine an intelligent artificial intelligence could probably handpick the best answer related to the actual underlying problem that it sees that a
Mm-hmm.
human might not be able to see and really give the best answers. Like, I think my best guess is you should do this now. Um, uh, I think there's a huge potential for that in industrial sort of maintenance world.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty excited to get to that point. I'd say right now, a lot of problems you're solving could be solved with like if a statement, if this thing is vibrating, therefore do that, because
Mm-hmm.
that's the gap we see. But as we plug these holes, the future holes would be a little more, would have more nuance, and that's when the AI could really help us have better
Yeah.
answers. So I'm pretty excited about it.
It is truly exciting, and I love that you brought up like, you know, the if then this, sort of that logic component of things, because AI technically is logic, but just at a much faster rate, right? It's
Exactly.
doing that a million times faster than we could even plug in to just a basic code to do that. And it's quite interesting to me because I love that you talk about this in a future tense and not necessarily running towards doing that right now, is because ultimately you do have this already, right? You do have this already, but not in maybe necessarily as a more nuanced way, but you're working towards that in the future. The reason I think this is even more interesting is because parallels from the financial services industry is what I'm seeing right now is a lot of companies want to go from having not so great systems and processes internally directly to AI. But AI doesn't necessarily solve your problems if you don't have good systems and processes in place, because it's only going to exponentially make those problems worse, right? So I think what you're doing is creating this really good system where automation exists. You're perfecting that automation. And once you perfected that automation, it gives it really clean, reliable, consistent, and more accurate data to actually feed into an AI because it's structured so well. So I I love this approach because it's not just running for the shiny ball as an entrepreneur. It's really doing the hard groundwork that people aren't doing to build something that is sustainable in the future.
Yeah, that almost brings figurative tears to my eyes. That someone appreciates that. Like, if you run into a client, they want to go AI. I'm like, well, hang on. You can have an Excel file to keep track of what you did for the last thing. And if you don't have, and everything you have is a bunch of WhatsApp messages sent randomly between people, I
Mm-hmm.
suppose jumping to AI is like overdoing it. But yeah,
Yeah. Because
that's
there is
very
no
much a challenge.
yeah, it's such a challenge because as entrepreneurs, like, you want to do the best for your customer, but sometimes there's that gap between you and the customer where you don't necessarily see eye to eye on how things should work. And then there are other companies that are over promising them these things and they run for the shiny ball. How do you reconcile that with customers when they might just write you off because, oh, you don't use AI right now. You you're just using automation.
I don't think we have that figured out. It's been part of our learning. that
Mm-hmm.
engagement with the customer. It's still learning in our communication. We happen to be in an industry where the needs are so great that we don't need to really try that hard. You know what I mean? Like they got a machine down, they got a machine down.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but being able to it's something I had to learn, and Joe has taught me he's tried to train me in interaction with customers. We can't always train the customer. We can't always show up in the meeting and say, no, their idea is really bad idea. Let me tell you how to do it. That's not a working
Mm-hmm.
setup.
Yeah.
So it's every time we have to gauge it. But you know, hopefully by
That
the
is a
time I'm done,
skill.
I learn something. It is a skill. It is a skill to
It's a skill.
change exactly, like to change some
Mm-hmm.
or bring them to an effective solution without offending their sense of what they need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really fine line, I think, to walk as an entrepreneur. But I think where you have to really decide that, you know, how do you show them your value when they're looking for something else? And I think all you can really do is make sure your value is incredibly clear. You're speaking to the real pain points that they have and sort of bringing them back to that. Because one of the things I do in my sales calls is I really try to get them to define their problem themselves. And then I use their words throughout the rest of the conversation because then I think it makes them feel one, heard, and two, if you don't quite understand their problem, you can have them define that problem for you and then ultimately get them to a place where they can truly understand the value that you bring to the table as well too in helping them define that problem. And what I think that does is it takes away less of the shiny ball and it allows you to shine in terms of knowing the expertise of that company and their industry a little bit more like nuanced instead of just simply showing off the product that you have. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and it's interesting you mentioned because ultimately I think you are probably better at that than I am. And one of
Mm-hmm.
my learnings as sort of founder has been that there are certain skills in sales that I don't have, but I need to find the right person for it and let them do it
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to try to learn it because there's no amount of learning that's going to get me to that point as effective as someone who knows how to do this.
Yeah.
Um, because you're right, and like a whole other side to this is like at least in our niche industry is like we need to gauge as much. We need to have the organizational confidence to sometimes say this customer is not worth my time, and this is not that. But it's like they're somewhere else in their journey, and I need to not bleed time into it because I can't afford to. And
Yeah.
that's taken us a long time, and that comes from like maybe uh, if they don't, they generally don't think they have a problem. There's nothing I can do to make them buy, I think.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
and little things like this. Um, and all of that has been part of the learning, but including the fact that like having these skills and be ready to exercise them, meet conversation with the customer is an
Mm-hmm.
expertise. And I need to find the right expertise to put it in that place as opposed to try to DIY it myself. I think
Mm-hmm.
one part I probably should have not tried to DIY is the sales.
Mm.
Uh,
Does Joe counterbalance that for you as being a partnership? Because
Very
that's
much
that,
so.
yeah, yeah, that's
Uh,
good. That's really good.
Very much so. He sort of listened to the customer, connected with the customer, let them feel heard. Um, and that allows us to build sort of the early phases of the business. Um,
Mm-hmm. And now you're ready to go to the next level, which means you need sort of a slightly different skill set to actually really get to that next level that you want to be.
Yeah, I think if I want to sort of be systematic about breaking down, the first phase is like there's a small number of customers. We kind of need to really foster relationship and like uh, the customer acquisition cost could be really high because we only had like three, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now we are going to a phase where we need to play the game of I want 30 customers and I should probably try 300 and and stick to my like 10%. And and
Mm-hmm.
we had a really high sort of conversion rate. I would say we attempted four customers, we sold three times. But
Wow.
next phase or this phase is like we probably should try 300 and sell 30 and really reduce our cost. These numbers
Mm-hmm.
might not work in every other industry. I'm not trying to claim that we
No,
were
no, no,
so good.
no.
It's just like it's a very niche sort of the customers are in a desperate situation. But that one we didn't sell, they just were somewhere else. Like they had various sort of this conflict themselves or something like that. I don't know.
Correct. They have other
Uh,
priorities, and you can't
exactly.
control that. Yeah.
Exactly. And even when it comes to our next phase and these 300, there are a lot more elements we can't control. So we really have to focus on reducing our cost and just have a systematic approach, just have our deliverable, refine our packaging, uh, you know, um, and optimize that. But at least that's my sort of strategic thought right now. Like we can't make a custom presentation for every customer anymore. This is what
Oh,
we've got.
yeah. So that's actually super, super exciting. And um I mean, you're doing so much better than like you even thought you were doing at this, right? Like your conversion rate of like 75%, I think in any industry is incredible. So I think you should like really pat yourself on the back for that one. And one, I think it also speaks to your solution being so sound and you being so good at what you want to do. But where the growing pains are really happening, for the company is really about taking it to the next level. And there were growing pains in the start. So you're just hitting that threshold where you have that growing pain to get to the next level of where you want to be. And that makes me, think about you yourself, because one of the things I really love talking about on the podcast, especially this season, is about when you're building a company, you're not just building a company, you're building two things at once. You're building yourself as a person because you're growing all the time. You're overcoming all these things yourself as an individual, as well as overcoming these things at the business. As you get to this growth phase, what are some of the things that you think you have to overcome as an individual and an entrepreneur in order to help take your business to the next level?
One of the big ones is my desire and need almost to control every aspect of it.
Hmm.
I need to move more and more towards ask people what to do and let them decide the how, as opposed to being knee deep or neck deep in certain elements of it.
Hmm.
And also sort of appreciate and allow room for people learning and growing with their role. Um, and both of these things require a tighter definition of the roles and responsibilities and the places that are being defined for a person to go in and then defining success for them.
Hmm.
Um, this is what you need to do, and this is what success looks like. And even as I'm saying this to you, it sort of suddenly becomes more sort of highlight in my mind. Like if I don't define that success, then nobody feels good at the end of the year, and that's a bad
Yes.
position to be in.
Hmm. And that's for you. That's for your co-founder. That's for all of your employees. And um, I think that's such a great reflection, and I'm glad that it's hitting you right now as well too, because if we don't define these things for ourselves, then where are we going? You know,
Mhm.
what is the path are we actually going to take to move forward? But it's always super exciting. Even though it's so hard and you're going through the path of growing pains, what you've achieved so far is absolutely phenomenal in, you know, building in building a company in an industry where I don't even do we even have wind turbines in Hamilton?
There's a set in Bimbrook.
Okay.
They're super helpful to us. It's company Ranking Power. They've been helpful with a lot of things. And there's one in downtown Toronto owned by the same group, at the Exhibition
Mm.
Place. And
Okay. Okay. Yes.
in the funniest way, like having someone who comes from software background and take them to a wind turbine, when they write software for it and they look at it, that's been incredible. Like that opportunity for our team to look at a wind turbine and say, yeah, this thing is
Mm-hmm.
really, really big. Um,
Yes.
but anyway, like we I don't know, we are exporting, we are catering to like places outside immediate Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately our core team is here and we love the opportunities the city has afforded us.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. And I mean, we didn't even really talk about it, but both uh both your company, AP, and my company, In Charge, we've both been companies of the Forge for quite some time. You've been there before me, longer than I have, and it's how we met, and it's quite amazing to see how this community of entrepreneurs can come together and work in the same space with their teams, and really cultivate a real sense of community and sharing in the challenges and the successes and the growing pains that we all have over time. And I'm so happy that we're able to sit down and sort of talk about your story a little bit and what were some of the challenges in, building a business like this, but also, your real need to like stay in our city and build your team in our city. I think that's even more amazing because you took a passion that you have and you decided to make that happen where you live and exist. And I think that's amazing. So before we sort of wrap up this episode, um, I want to go back to the three questions we talked about before we started recording, which was the first one was, what is one thing you are leaving behind in your entrepreneurial journey?
Trying to leave behind ego, but it's very hard.
Mm, why ego and why is it hard?
Because sometimes it's not about me as a person being right, it's about what works for
Mm-hmm.
for the company, for me, for the client, for whatever. But that a lot of times that's not the answer I thought is correct.
Yeah, yeah.
Although I'm
That's
always
a hard one.
correct. Yeah, I know I'm always correct, and I know I am, but sometimes I'm just not.
Yeah, that's ego. Ego is a hard one. But I think it sometimes comes from a place of just wanting what you want so badly. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. That's the problem. Yeah, I think that's been an ongoing lesson.
Yeah, leaving the ego behind. I love that one. Um, the second question is, what has been your biggest learning?
The need for clarity between people, between projects, every aspect, like incomplete. communication is going to backfire, even if it's convenient.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. So clarity over convenience.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And your last one is, what is one thing you are taking into the future for yourself and for your company?
Um, I think keeping eyes on the prize and doing that through sort of distinguishing between urgent and important. Um,
Mm,
they just, I still do every day. I kind of want to go out with the urgent, but is it really important? Like if I think about the prize, sometimes a lot of little things just kind of go into the background. So I want to get better at
yeah.
it. That's what I'm trying to take to the future. Let's talk in a year whether I succeed or not, but I'm trying.
You will succeed. You will succeed, Amin. I believe it. Uh,
Thank
I
you.
think I think that's a really good one though, because there is a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise, and especially as an executive, you are there to help other people solve their problems, but you also have individual problems you have to solve within the business yourself. So then how do you truly, truly prioritize that? Um, I can share a strategy that I use for myself with you if it's interesting.
It is.
But one of the things that I do is I determine, does this actually have to be done within the next 12 to 24 hours? So I use time as a marker. I use importance as a marker, and I use impact as a marker. So basically, when is it needed? Why is it needed? And if I don't hit those two things, the why and the when, then how catastrophic is the impact? And that's sort of how I make a lot of decisions if I'm confused as to what I need to work on and how I need to prioritize it. So I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be helpful to you, but that's sort of how I think about it. Because the, you know, if the time is more than 12 to 24 hours and I have something that's due sooner than that, that has a higher impact, then why would I do that? And procrastination, sometimes I find I procrastinate on things that I really don't want to do. And what I go and do is I do everything else, and including cleaning. Um, but sometimes what I realize is taking a step away from things and doing other things helps you just process a lot of things subconsciously and you get to the answer of what you need sooner. So, yeah, that was a lot of things, but those are some of the things I do, whether I'm procrastinating or trying to prioritize different things.
I appreciate it. Like I'm so bad at it, any help would be useful. I'll try to be like to all these three. Maybe I'll just give it one, two, three to these three questions and just use that matrix to decide.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
appreciate
do
it. Yeah,
that
that's helpful.
and I'll see. Yeah, you let me know how that goes. Send me a Slack message.
Yeah, I will. I need to filter some things out because a lot of things get done that never needed to be done.
Hmm. Well, I mean, I appreciate how candid you've been in talking about your entrepreneurial journey. Um, it is an exciting one, but it's also a hard one and a challenging one, and one that like pushes us to grow individually, um, and professionally in so many ways. So I love your candid view of everything. And, you know, anyone that might be listening and is really excited to connect with Amin from, the perspective of learning about the industry or brings, maybe specific skills from the industry that could be beneficial in the way that AP Renewables is growing. We will definitely have Amin's contact for you as he's looking to expand his team and find the right talent to fit into AP Renewables as they go through another growth trajectory that is incredibly exciting.
Thank you. It's lovely. We want to have I think our next phase is having a dedicated COO, and we just want to find the right person who could really glue things together and motivate people.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. So you might be out there. Let us know.
Okay. Yeah. Love to talk to you, someone out there. So it was lovely talking to you, Shalicia, and I appreciate the opportunity to sort of share this story.
Absolutely. Well, stay tuned for our next buzzworthy story. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We're so glad to have you as part of our Buzzworthy community as we grow our network of buzzworthy businesses. Continue to follow us on all the social media platforms at buzzworthy_pod and follow us on whatever platform you're listening to so that you can get the new episodes as soon as they're out. This Buzzworthy podcast could not be done without our incredible team, starting with our music by Khaled Imam, our video and sound engineer, James Clark, Yvette Robichaux, our social media manager, Cesar Cardania, our brand and creative lead, and finally, your host and executive producer, Shalacia Harris. We'll see you next week.